scratch and sniff.
Hello, Scratch and Sniffers, Nick Randall here. We have a lovely bite-sized Christmas show for you today, all beautifully wrapped up under the Christmas tree for your listening pleasure. And it's all about this.
Little girl, your head is nodding. One last lullaby. In the morning, Santa's calling. Time to close your eyes.
An extract from Michael Armstrong's Christmas single, Little Girl, Bells of Christmas, which, as you'll find out, will have very strong links to our very first show of 2017, to be released in January, concerning the iconic Cavern nightclub in the heart of Liverpool. Well, Michael's in the studio today. First, welcome to the programme, Michael. You have, of course, not only played at the Cavern, but had your debut album launched there. I would have thought for a musician and a Beatles fan, that have a great authority that you are, that must have been quite a moment for you.
It was a dream come true. I mean, I studied the Beatles, I think, when I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, and I knew everything about them, had read every book. My parents bought me the album collection, I think for my 9th or 10th birthday, and I listened to them from front to back. And as soon as I could drive, Liverpool was the first place I went with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife.
Hello, wife, Mike.
Yeah, so we drove up to Liverpool and stayed for the weekend, and I went round all the sites and Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields and went on the Beatles tour and kind of fulfilled that ambition. It was weird. It's kind of become my second home because this whole music career kind of started out when I recorded an EP, and that was actually recorded in Liverpool,
right,
by a local producer from Liverpool called Steve Dinwoody, and we recorded it at Elevator Studios in Cheapside, and got a good reaction, which then led on to the debut album. And I've met Debbie Greenberg, and she still has great connections with the Cavern Club, and loved the album and arranged for me to go and launch the album at the Cavern Club, which was fantastic. Family and friends came along. I also insisted on playing an hour's afternoon set on the Little Beatles stage, and my band and I played an hour's worth of Beatles songs for all the tourists.
Oh, fantastic.
It's one of the greatest things I've ever done.
So how did you first get involved in Debbie's Christmas song? A song, it must be said, that was never heard publicly before.
Well, I mean, I guess I have to tell the story of how I met Debbie. We've established I'm a bit of a Beatles nut, and there was a classical guitar recital of Beatles songs at a church in Penny Lane in Liverpool, and I was invited to go along to that. And so again, drove up to Liverpool, say my second home, and saw this wonderful recital. And afterwards there was a kind of reception in an art gallery down the road, and Debbie and Nigel Greenberg were there. Nigel's her husband.
Yeah. And
we got chatting, having a glass of wine. And I just met Paul McCartney.
Wow!
Yeah. And so he was my screensaver on my phone, so I was showing him this.
That's fantastic.
Said, well, I know I've got these pictures of Paul McCartney, and she pulled out her photographs and told me the story of how her dad had owned the Cavern in the 60s.
We're best mates, me and Paul, but I don't want to sort of ruin your story, mate.
And so we just hit it off from there, and we kept in contact. And that weekend of the launch gig, they kindly put my band and I up at their house in Liverpool while we did the gig. And she played me one evening after the gig, I think. She played me this CD. She said, my dad, not only did he own the Cavern, but he was also a musician and a songwriter, and he wrote this song for me. And the song was called On Christmas Day. And she played it for me, and it's a beautiful song. And
so was this actually sung by her dad? I mean, what were you actually listening to?
It had been put onto a CD, obviously, in later years, but her dad had given it to her in 1967, I guess, on a cassette or something. Her dad had written it and recorded it, but he'd got someone else, a session person, to sing it, and gave it to her for Christmas. And I say, a really touching song, and she gave me a copy of the CD, and she said, if there's ever anything you can do with it, then it's all yours. And I was so busy, the album had just come out. I toured pretty much constantly for about 12 months after the album was released. It was only about 2.5, 3 months ago that I've started working on a second album with a guy, and I'm working with a producer called Warren Bennett. And Warren, if you thought I was a Beatles fan, then Warren is on a different planet. I mean, this guy knows everything about the Beatles and more. every time I went to the studio, he'd bring out another rare Beatles song or a rare Beatles video, which I'd never seen. Oh, I bet you haven't seen this. And I was like, wow. So I thought, I've got to get him. I said, you know what? I've got something you've never heard. No, you haven't. He said, I have. I said, I have a song written by the owner of the Cavern Club, which no one has ever heard. No, he said, doesn't exist. I said, it does. Okay. So I played in this CD, and it was a strange moment. It was about 31 degrees of heat, and we had this Christmas song blaring in the studio.
It's always a way, isn't it? You record the Christmas songs in August and things.
Yeah, absolutely. And it finished, and we both looked at each other, and we said, you know, we could do something with this. And I said, well, Debbie's given me permission to record something. And he said, well, let's do it. So we set about changing it a little bit. It needed a new chorus, and I had to change the lyrics a bit. But essentially, it was Alf's song from 1967. And so we recorded a demo, and then came the crunch time because I had to send it to Debbie. And I know what it's like because I write songs and you give them to producers or other people and they change them and you have to bite your lip, and sometimes it's not what you wanted. And I knew that Debbie had been listening to this song for 50 years, you know, bringing it out every Christmas.
And then you roll. You roll in.
So I sent her this demo. I said, look, hope you don't mind. We've changed this, we've changed that. What do you think? And she called me up within about 5 minutes in tears. And she said,
oh, my God, well, that's no good, is it?
It's a bit worrying. But tears of joy, thankfully. And she absolutely loved it and said, please, go ahead, let's do it.
Ring the bells for Christmas. It's that time of the year with the bells.
And she told me at that time, which I didn't know, that she was also releasing a book of her memoirs about the Cavern Club, The Inside Story. And it was being published in time for Christmas. And I thought, well, that's a wonderful omen that these two have come together. Followed by that, we then found out that the Cavern Club is 60 years old in January. Opened in 1957 as a jazz club. And so their 60th anniversary celebrations are well underway. Yeah. And they got wind of the song. And they said, well, let's make it the official 60th anniversary song. And so it's
almost like everything sort of ties into a beautiful red bow for Christmas, a touch of serendipity, I would have thought, all these different anniversaries and things tying up personal stuff.
Yeah, you know you've done the right thing when all these things come together.
Now, you managed to get some star guests on this track, creating a super group, if you like. Tell us about them.
Well, I mentioned that I've been working with a guy called Warren Bennett, and Warren Bennett is a very successful composer, a musician, and singer and songwriter himself. But he also has a rather famous dad, and that is Brian Bennett. And Brian played the drums in the Shadows. Still the UK's most successful instrumental band of all time. Wow. I think they're the third most successful band of all time, full stop, in the UK, behind Cliff and the Beatles.
Yeah.
And Brian and Cliff and the Shadows played at the Cavern Club in the 60s, and he's told me some wonderful stories about that. And so, you know, I said to Warren, can we ask your dad to play the drums? He's still very active, he's still a great composer. And he said, yeah, of course. And his dad loved the song and really wanted to be a part of it. And so we got him to play on it. And that was, it was kind of coming full circle, you know.
How wonderful is that?
Authenticity to it, which is, fantastic. And of course, Warren appears on it. And I got a wonderful saxophonist called Ed Barker, who was a recent American #1 saxophonist. So pretty good guys.
I would call that a super group. Yeah. Absolutely. So where do people go to buy both the single and indeed your first album? Because, you know, you do your own stuff anyway.
Yeah. The single is available to digitally download from all the usual places, iTunes, Amazon, and places like that.
Are they on sort of things like Wax Cylinder for old fogies like me and a vinyl and stuff?
Not vinyl, but you can get a physical CD single, and the best place to get that is via my website, which is michaelarmstrongmusic.co.uk. And there's a limited edition of them because we've had them signed by myself, by Debbie Greenberg, by Warren Bennett, and by the great Brian Bennett of the Shadows.
Oh my God, that's amazing!
Yeah. So we had a limited run done, and we've all sat for hours signing this limited run, and there are a few left. So yeah, via the website is the best place to go.
Fantastic. Okay, Mike, thanks so much for joining us. It only remains for me to give you your celebrity goodie bag, which all the guests get.
Oh, wow. Thank you very, very much. Look at this.
There you go, sir. And happy Christmas and best of luck with the single, which we're going to hear now.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Little girl, your head is nodding. one last lullaby. In the morning, Santa's calling. Time to close your eyes. Little girl, I know you're asking, will I always be there when day is dawning and snow is falling, when you say a prayer? Ring the bells for Christmas. It's that time of the year, with the bells of Christmas. I'll always be here. Little girl, we'll light a candle, hold it close to your heart. With my kisses, these reminiscences mean we'll never part.